with the Authority newspaper, Nasarawa Supreme Court's litmus test as Gubatazo ends, how governor's religious bias allegation may haunt verdict. Electorates hope Apex Court will uphold sanctity of ballot box. That's one of the major stories there. And then we have Uzodinma's second term, Tinubu storms Imo on Monday.
Let's go now to the Nigerian pilots, and there's a screaming headline there. Insecurity, no excuse to fail. Chief of Air Staff says military has no excuse not to secure Nigeria, that President Tinubu has provided needed equipment for it to deliver on its mandate, urges troops to sustain onslaught against criminal elements across Nigeria, as 3.2 trillion naira is earmarked for defense security in 2024 Appropriation Act. That's the lead story on the Nigerian pilot. You'll find it on page 8 of the newspaper.
Okay, let's look at the leadership newspaper, the bold one there. Kidnapping in FCT, concern as Pantami raises ransom for victims, says security agencies not utilizing the name SIM policy. Terrorists kill victim after ransom payment, demand additional 60 million naira. We have deployed operatives to rescue them, the police says. You can check out all of the details of that in the leadership newspaper. Detained vessel, we loaded 119 tons of crude oil. That's according to a captain you may want to pick up and find out who. Armed Forces Day, we won't compromise Nigeria's unity, Akpabio says.
The Daily Times leads with the story saying Tinubu's minister Buhari's cronies panic as Edun's panel begins probe. That's on page 5. And looking at other headlines on that newspaper, going right down to the bottom of the page, you see counter-terrorism strikes tribute to fallen heroes, says Chief of Air Staff. And of course, IBB saying military coup no longer possible in Nigeria, on page 4 of the Daily Times.
That's an interesting one, really. Okay, so let's bring in our reviewers in now, starting with Lemmy, who is already seated. Okay, should we begin with the court?
Yeah, I think it's a good place to start.
To start, right? Nasarawa Supreme Court's litmus test as Gubatazo ends. We saw what happened all through last week after the judgment delivered by the Supreme Court, and how it seems everywhere has become very calm in my own, analysis. And then this one, the authority newspaper is saying that there's one litmus test still left for the Supreme Court, and that's the Nasarawa election. Let's get your thoughts on this.
Okay. Well, you would recall that last Monday, I made a heavy weather of the cases that were before the Supreme Court, whose judgment came last Friday. At that segment, I described the Supreme Court as the video assistant referee, akin to the one used at the EPL, English Premier League. Interestingly, we must take time now, because when you give people flack when they do badly, when they do well, you also need to applaud them. So the Supreme Court this time, acting as VAR, really did clean up their lenses so well that they were able to properly interpret the law, as it were. We had shouted ourselves hoarse about the very inglorious and infamous decisions of the Court of Appeal, in particularly the cases of Kano, Zamfara, and Plateau State. The Supreme Court, rightly, because we talk about judicial rascality and disobedience, the Appeal Court had sought, by their decisions in the Kano and even the Plateau cases, the Appeal Court had sought to actually disobey establish judicial precedents on issues around pre-election matters, which had to do with issues of party nomination of a candidate for election. So the Supreme Court reinforced and affirmed this position that the decisions of the Court of Appeal in those cases that led to their nullifying the victories of these gentlemen, especially Governor Muftwang, where was a decision that was reached in error because pre-election matters remained pre-election matters, and it amounted to even the appeal court welcoming meddlesome interlopers who were neither party members of the PDP but encouraged them to pursue a case in that direction and decided to nullify the election of the governor. But rightly, acting as VAR, the Supreme Court did well in those cases, particularly the cases of Zamfara, Plateau, and Kano, you know. However, one thing must be stated, that having taken a position like that and returned the people who were democratically elected by their electorates, the injustice done to the lawmakers, both federal and state level in Plateau State, needs to be attended to. One, it is our candid position that the members of the panel of the Court of Appeal either compromised or displayed gross incompetence, which led to the disenfranchisement of the electorates. Because people who had won elections, by the pronouncement of the Supreme Court, it showed that a miscarriage of justice had been done to about 16 lawmakers of the PDP extraction. Now the argument becomes, what happens to them since the appeal court is the final court?
Go ahead.
Since the appeal court is the final court, what happens in that situation? Lawyers have argued that being the final court.
Go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
Lawyers had argued that being the final court, that nothing can be done about it. Other lawyers had even sought that an administrative position should be such that the case can be taken to the Supreme Court to review the miscarriage of justice done to the 16 lawmakers, both at the federal and state level. But it's our candid position that since the Supreme Court in election tribunals at legislative level is the appeal court, that argument is superfluous and bogus. It is our submission that the appeal court, being the apex court, is the only court that can review its decision. If they have discovered that an infraction has been committed, a miscarriage of justice has been committed, the Supreme Court itself does not have jurisdiction over matters of the legislative houses of assembly or national assembly. So we want to urge Justice Monica Dongba Mensing, who happens to also be enmeshed in the controversy about the Court of Appeal, having been the one from Plateau State also, from Shendam, the same local government with, what's his name, the immediate past governor, Simon Lalong, who appointed our own daughter as a judge of the Plateau State High Court. Eventually, of course, our son-in-law also becomes a justice of the Court of Appeal. So there's a lot of controversy around it that for her to have kept quiet and watched, especially that the panel that sat over all legislative election matters. This is a novel one because it is not always so with other states. So that is on one hand. There is a need to call on the National Judicial Council, the DSS, and others to probe whether it was a case of compromise on the part of the panelists of the Court of Appeal who sat over the election matters in Plateau State, on one hand. Two, to also investigate the president of the Court of Appeal for a seeming involvement in the decisions that led to the travesty of justice against 16 lawmakers, which, of course, subverts the interest of democracy, because the majority who voted them have now been denied the opportunity of their votes counting and them having the people they voted into power. That said, we'll come to Nasarawa State. Now, Nasarawa State is a very interesting case. I've followed the governorship elections, election issues in Nasarawa State for a long while. Now, in this particular instance, it seems such an easy decision to reach. But again, the Court of Appeal, in its very controversial and inglorious and infamous decision, decided to breathe life back into Governor Sule's political ambition. One, the evidence abound, very compelling and persuasive evidence abound that 2 local governments were actually tampered with. David Umbagazu was coasting home to victory. He had majority of the votes. Then suddenly, in 2 local governments, they decided in the wake of the night to tamper with the votes. I say this without equivocation because the votes that eventually made Sule winner of that election were votes from 2 local governments whose accreditation were lower than the votes cast. So ordinarily, what should be the position of an appeal court? If the election, governorship election tribunal in Nasarawa State had investigated and on the groundswell of evidence brought as the winner of the election, when it came to the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal, in its typical manner, and it did not start in 2023, the Court of Appeal, if you notice in the case of PDP versus Ifeanyi Ararume, the Court of Appeal also played an inglorious role. That was in 2003 or thereabout. In the case of Amechi versus Omea, the same controversial positions were taken by the appeal court. Now, in this instance, the appeal court, which was equipped, seized of the facts, given all of the documents from which the tribunal reached a justiciable decision, the appeal court decided that it was going to nullify the decision, upturn the decision of the tribunal, which upheld David Umbagadu as winner, and decided that in those 2 local governments where votes had surpassed the accredited voters, that it was still going to add those votes to the votes of Sule, and that is how Sule was now returned as governor. That is a travesty, clearly speaking, because the IREV documents are there, the votes cast are there, the ones signed by the agents are there, until alteration and manipulation, and it's very, very shameful. So I want to hope that the Supreme Court, in looking at this matter, would be able to act properly as VAR, clean its lenses again, look at it dispassionately, without anybody's interest but the interest of the law at heart. Look at it, do justice, and as it is said, justice should not only be done, justice should be seen to be done. Remember that Nasarawa is tensed as we speak. For how many weeks they had always, you see women even stripped naked, going on a protest and all that. We must begin to restore the confidence of the public in the judiciary. The Supreme Court, even though has its own cases to answer, by Friday started the journey of redemption. We hope that by tomorrow, when decision on Nasarawa is taken, that they will look at all the facts and be able to reach the decision that will enforce the decision, the interest of the people. You've spoken extensively about the Supreme Court ruling that's coming up on Tuesday concerning the governorship election in Nasarawa State. Let's look at this headline on the front page of the Daily Sun. Turbulent times ahead for aviation sector. Nigeria loses 40% market share over trapped $800 million high fare compared to neighbors. And of course, jobs, $1 billion revenue at risk.
as more airlines plan to exit from country. The aviation industry in Nigeria has been under a lot of scrutiny of late, especially in the light of the departure of some of these airlines. And in fact, not just departure, the unfairly high fares that Nigerians are made to pay when they're flying to destinations outside of Nigeria. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's really very, very disturbing. We need to be able to address these issues. We have the Minister Festus Keyamo on the saddle. I think he has his work cut out for him. We also have the president who's been doing a lot of globe-trotting, as it were, wanting to get investors, foreign direct investment into Nigeria. They need to really look at this issue very seriously. Because if you look at even the value of the Naira, it plays a very significant role also in why the prices of tickets to fly out becomes really worrisome. Even the domestic travels, it's almost unaffordable for most people now.
No, but let me, frequent travelers will tell you that if you buy a ticket to go to the UK, for instance, here in Nigeria, and you compare with the cost of buying the same ticket from a neighboring country.
I agree with you. In Ghana,
it's significantly different.
Lots of Nigerians now actually find their way to Benin or to Ghana from where they fly out to Europe, because it's significantly cheaper out there. You could save as much as 700, 800 or more thousand naira if you do that. So yes, that is true. However, what is the value of the Naira and what is the value of, for instance, the Ghanaian cedis or the Beninois, what do they use?
CFA.
CFA, you know. So it's a major matter. Then we really need to also have government wading in. Remember again, even these airlines, repatriation of their
funds,
money, of their funds is a challenge. So somehow the what's it called? The commuter pays the price one way or the other, because with such difficulty, it makes business very discouraging for them, and therefore, if they must carry, they try to also increase it. I think government needs to sit down. Government needs to have serious intervention. It's a major matter, and we cannot wish it away. There is the need for the president, the Minister of Aviation, all stakeholders to sit back and look at what can be done. One, people should be able to repatriate their money, but where is the dollars? It's a major matter. And so it affects, and that's why airlines are pulling out. And once they pull out, and you have limited airlines, naturally, there'll be more demands for these services. And so when there is less service provider for a certain service, there is natural that the price goes up. So we really need to make the environment, the aviation environment, conducive enough. We need to address it at a level where all of these travels, we should start from home and see what can be done to bring it down.
All right, so let's go to another issue captured by some of the papers. The Nigerian pilot led with insecurity, no excuse to fail, with so many issues that were credited to the Chief of Air Staff, says there's no excuse for the military not to secure Nigeria, and that President Tinubu has provided every needed equipment for it to deliver on its mandate, and then urging troops to sustain onslaught against criminal elements. Also talked about the amount that is earmarked for defense security in 2024 budget, which is 3.2 trillion naira. So you also juxtapose that with another story. I don't know which of the papers now. We said kidnapping in FCT concerns as Pantami raises ransom.
Yeah, that's leadership principle.
That's leadership. Okay. So let's put these two stories together and see how this war can be won eventually.
Yes, Coming from the Chief of Air Staff, insecurity, no excuse to fail. Soundbite sounds very good, but we need to put our money where our mouth is. There's a lot of votes in the 2024 budget. We want to see action. We want to see that the work is being done. We want to see insecurity really genuinely go down, because insecurity is pervasive. In Abuja, as the pilot says, it's so disheartening to see the number of people, especially around the Buhari axis. Remember, it was around Buhari that the members of the brigades of guards were gunned down in Buhari's tenure towards the twilight of his presidency. Now, there's so much insecurity. It's all over Abuja, but Buhari and its environs are the most hit in that sense. Over the weekend, another family was attacked. As a matter of fact, they killed one of the children in that house and took away a pregnant, they killed a child, I think, and took away a pregnant woman and a daughter, a 2-year-old daughter. The husband was in at home, so now they are asking for a ransom of, is it 6 million or thereabout? Now, every day, there is one case or the other of kidnapping, of kidnapping around Buhari, even in EFAB. So it's not just Buhari. It's key in Buhari. It's very serious in Kuje. There was the one that happened in EFAB around that life camp Kado axis, sometime last year.
And these are the ones that are reported. I know there are so many that are still unreported.
Look, nowhere in Abuja is safe as we speak. So, and that's why it is incumbent on us as media persons to call on Minister Nyesom Wike that it's time he concentrated more on his new brief. His brief is no longer the governor of Rivers State. Instead of spending so much time, emotions, energy, and resources wanting to show that he is in control of Rivers, we, the people of the FCT, need Wike to concentrate on delivering and restoring security in Abuja. There is insecurity everywhere, but the minister of FCT is responsible for the work in FCT. So we need to call him to concentrate. It's so terrible that, look, there is no safety at all. You must not have a problem around Area 1 or the stadium roundabout with your car anytime after 6 o'clock. If you do, and you do not run away from your car and just abandon it there, I can assure you that you will be attacked. One of my friends eventually lost his life, a colleague of mine, Matthias Okwe, because he parked opposite the General Hospital in Gariki to take a call. And he was attacked, and they stabbed him and brutalized him so badly, he didn't die there, but he never recovered from it. 2 years or thereabout later, he died. The case of One Chance is also a major matter. I lost a brother-in-law to One Chance. There's so much that Wike has to attend to, that he should, look, if he wants to go back to Rivers, then he should drop the position as minister and go and struggle to be leader of Rivers people. Because there is really no reason with the amount of work.
But Nyesom Wike is minister, he's not the chief security. He's not, he's not one of the security chiefs or the police commissioner.
No, he is minister of the FCT. If he focuses on it, he has the wherewithal and the backing of the president to do the right thing and get the secure. Look, who is the head of Abuja? Abuja is deemed now to be like a state based on the Supreme Court decision on the presidential election. So, yes, in nomenclature, he's the chief security officer in that regard. However, if he was just alone, it will be a different thing. This is where the seat of all of the security forces is, the headquarters, and he enjoys the direct access and goodwill of the president and commander-in-chief. if he focuses on addressing the issues and seeks the assistance of the commander-in-chief, then we can arrest all of the criminality, kidnapping, banditry, terrorism going on in Abuja. But until he concentrates, we will continue to shout ourselves hoarse because as we speak, nobody is safe. There is no estate today that if these people decide that they want to go to, they will not achieve what they want to do because there is no security.
Okay, quite sad there, but we do hope authorities are listening.
Wow.
And if the minister actually takes this seriously, like you're saying, and then gets the security agencies involved, I'm sure he will get the maximum support he needs to ensure, because even the one chance that has led to the killing of many people, we still see it happening every day. Some are very, very unreported, some are underreported. So you can't imagine what people go through really every day, particularly the fact that there is no even official public transport. You know, people use all manner of vehicles for transport, and you just get in and then you find out you have entered the wrong one. So we must thank you very much, Lemmy, for your time with us on the newspaper review. You did justice to all of that.
Thank you for watching. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing so you won't miss out any of our latest video.